Can you see my screen?
No, sir.
Not yet, sir.
Not yet.
Okay, so now it's coming up.
Now visible, sir.
You can see, no? Okay. Uh, as my colleague Dr. Akshat Prakash has introduced, I'm KP Sinha Mahapatra. I'm a professor at Aerospace Engineering, IIT Kharagpur, and this is my contact address. So today I will talk on the topic computational fluid dynamics and computational aeroacoustic coupled problems. Mostly my talk will cover the preliminaries of modeling and simulation of the two problems, computational fluid dynamics and computational aeroacoustics, with some emphasis on aerospace and defense applications. Now, since this is a coupled problem we are talking about, computational fluid dynamics and computational aeroacoustics, and so it involves two different domain, the computational fluid dynamics or CFD and computational aeroacoustics. I presume that most of you are quite familiar with computational fluid dynamics, perhaps worked on it for some time, and you know what is done here. Computational fluid dynamics is essentially a numerical technique to solve predominantly fluid dynamics problem. However, broadly it is a technique to solve partial differential equations by numerical means. There are large number of methods for solving fluid dynamic problem or partial differential equations. They are finite difference method, finite volume method, finite element method, spectral methods, then again gridless methods, Lattice-Boltzmann method. There are many, and perhaps each of them covers a whole subject. Computers and computer programming are essential part to solve fluid dynamic problem or solving partial differential equation with numerical technique. Of course, the computations need to be validated. That's a part of the problem, that any numerical solution will not be accepted as a correct or approximate solution of the problem unless it is verified against established benchmark experimental data, or maybe in some cases flight test data. Now, there are several branches of fluid dynamical problem as applied to aerospace engineering, as applied to mechanical engineering or civil engineering, in many design, in transports, in chemical engineering, in nuclear engineering, and in all cases, the governing equations mathematically are the conservation laws. Depending upon the problem, we may need mass conservation, momentum conservation, energy conservation, charge conservation, species conservation, and so on. But all these conservation laws, which are defined by a partial differential equations or a set of partial differential equations, solving them by numerical methods, that the CFD. The CFD, as you know, that they are used, that it has a very great potential in the design, because when you compute the design spaces, if you go on performing experiments, making hundreds of models and running thousands of tests, that is extremely time consuming and expensive. Where CFD come in very handy, it can be used to simulate all these complete design space in a much less expenses. And this process is gradually improving day by day with the speed of computers and with the development of newer and faster algorithms. So you see that when you think about any design problem, the CFD can predict performance before any prototypes are built. We can check whether the product is meeting the specifications or regulations, and is it satisfying the requirement. Even if we can again look for if there is a possible way to improve the performance, all these problems can be answered using CFD. In the analysis stage, okay, it helps us to understand the physics better, what happened, how the things are happening, why it is happening. All these questions can be answered by the complete solutions that can be obtained from CFD. Also, you see that when you apply CFD, since you are obtaining your solutions covering a wider space, where if you perform experiments, placing your probes, measuring probes may not be possible. There are very many spaces in the design where you can't place your probes or instruments and you cannot get your data, but CFD can help you to get data at all desired locations. And since there is no intrusive probe, it is not even interfering with the actual flow. When you introduce any equipment that has some effect on the flow and which may change the flow pattern there, but if you do it numerically, no such problem is faced, and you can get the geometry as you want. Now, to run a CFD simulation, there are few steps. The first step, of course, is you have to define the geometry on which you are looking for the flow solution. This, the body on which you are looking for the flow to be solved, it might be an aircraft, it might be a car, it might be a locomotive, it might be the interior of a nuclear reactor. So for that, computer-aided design is used to define the geometry. Simultaneously, you have to define also the flow domain in which the flow is taking place and where you are looking for the solution for the simulation. Once the flow domain is defined, the next step is to discretize that space, because numerical technique solution is not a continuous solution. At the end of the day, you are not going to get a smooth function that the flow velocity is a function. You are getting only a numerical function, the flow velocity or pressure at some discrete points. So you have to discretize the domain, which is known as the meshing or grid generation. So that is the step 2. Once you discretize the domain, of course, you have to define the geometry, boundaries also, boundary of the geometry, including the computational domain. So which nodes or cells are on the boundary, and where the necessary boundary conditions are to be satisfied. The next stage is to define the physics, that is all the material properties, the flow behavior, which includes the governing equations and the boundary conditions. Then you have to, next stage comes that how you are going to solve it. That is the known as the solver part, whether you are using a finite difference or a finite volume or finite element or spectral. And then if you are using a finite difference scheme or a finite volume scheme, what type of discretization of the equations you are going to use. You have to discretize your equations accordingly and simultaneously set all the solver parameters, like whether there will be an under relaxation or over relaxation, how many time steps or iteration within a time steps are to be used, what would be the convergence criteria if you are looking for a steady state problem, if you are looking for an unsteady problem, how long you need to run it, how many cycles of periodic behavior you would like to simulate. So all these things you have to decide and set to solve the problem. Then
कर सकती हो
at the
लेकिन
end, of course,
करना पड़ रहा है बीच
the
बीच में.
post processing part or the most important part, which will help you to understand everything. That is analysis of the results. That's like measurement gives you data. Similarly, the CFD solutions also gives you data. The flow parameters at hundreds and thousands of points as per your geometry, but then you have to analyze what those data means or what exactly you want out of that data. So that is the post-processing or analysis of the results. That is the last stage of CFD. Now, since in this lecture we will mostly concerned with CFD and CAA, computational acoustics problem, so I'll just mention which of the CFD tools are useful for solving a aeroacoustics problem. So the available methods which are useful for CAA, it's not available methods in the sense that these are not the only available methods for design or analysis purpose, but they are the available methods for aeroacoustics, or they are the methods which can be used to solve aeroacoustic problems. The first is, of course, the direct numerical simulation, where you solve the complete conservation laws without introducing any type of physical assumptions or models. And these are just very stringent discretization criteria. That is, that the spatial and temporal discretization must be capable of capturing the smallest scales, which are known as Kolmogorov scales or dissipation scales. Simultaneously, your computational domain also must be large enough that will take care of the largest scales. The direct numerical simulations needs very high computing power and involves obviously the highest numerical cost. I mean, not comparing with the experimental or prototyping cost, but amongst all the numerical methods, this is the costliest. And of course, it needs very high computing power, and till date, it is not very practicable as an engineering tool because of the stringent requirement on the scales or discretizations. The equations themselves are the most fundamental equations. The Navier-Stokes equations that are given in the standard or classical fluid dynamics textbook, they are the equations. They are to be solved. No additional assumptions or models to be introduced. So the equations looks the simplest, but because of the discretization requirement, they are prohibitive. The next method which can be used for aeroacoustics simulations is the large eddy simulation. Here, the Navier-Stokes equations are filtered so that the smallest scales are removed from the equations, but the largest are removed. Of course, here you have to define what do you mean by the smallest scales. I mean, how small you would like to filter out and what you want to keep. Of course, as you mentioned, the smallest scale available in a flow are the Kolmogorov scales or the dissipation scales. If we keep up to that scales, even those scales, then it becomes direct numerical simulations. Nothing is filtered out. So when you are filtering out, of course, you are filtering out the Kolmogorov scales. But then how? In a flow, the flow scales have a very wide spectrum, starting from, say, the smallest Kolmogorov scales to the size of almost the computational domain. Say for an aircraft, the largest scale may be as large as the aircraft itself or even larger, while the smallest scale may be fraction of millimeter. And we have scales covering this entire spectrum, starting from, say, fractions of millimeters to few meters. Everything in between is possible scales and may be present in the flow. So here comes the decision that where do we cut? What is the cutoff? Definitely it will be larger than the Kolmogorov scales, but how larger, that has to be defined. So it might be, say, 10 times larger than the Kolmogorov will be filtered out. But anything more than 10 times the Kolmogorov scales, they will be retained. So this large eddy simulation essentially separates the scales. It is a scale separation technique where the very small scales are removed, both in time as well as in space. Here we have defined the Kolmogorov spatial scales, which you can see the square root of nu cube by epsilon. Nu is the kinematic viscosity, that is mu by rho, and epsilon is the rate of dissipation of kinetic energy. And the time scales is square root of nu by epsilon. The dissipation scale or Kolmogorov scales, they actually mean that the smallest eddy size that can sustain against the viscous dissipative action. Okay. Viscosity always tries to diffuse or dissipate the eddies, and anything smaller than this size cannot sustain. Viscosity will dissipate it. So eddies smaller than this size cannot be found in a flow. Viscosity will dissipate it. So this is the smallest scale that can sustain. So there are two techniques here. One is where we take a statistical average based on time, which is time average, and we get a new set of equations called the Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations, or we may apply a filter. Instead of a statistical average, we may apply a filter and filter out the smallest scales, and the resulting equations, we get a slightly different set of equations which are called large eddy simulation equations. However, since Reynolds averaging is a statistical averaging and average over the time, so small scale unsteadiness or small scale time fluctuations are removed because of the statistical or temporal averaging. So they are not very suitable for acoustic computations because acoustics is basically a small scale unsteadiness or fluctuation in time that results in sound. However, filtering operator or large area simulation, it filters the very smallest scales, but the small, relatively little larger, say larger than the 10 times of Kolmogorov scales, they still remain. So the unsteadiness is not removed in that sense, and they may be used for acoustic computations. So if we want to apply CFD technique for solving aeroacoustic problems, these are the two available methods: DNS, direct numerical simulation, and large area simulation or LES. These two can be used to aeroacoustics analysis or aeroacoustic computations. This gives a relative measure of the effectiveness of various computations: direct numerical simulation, large area simulation, and Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equation. To understand their relative merits, we may think about the energy cascading process that takes place in a flow where the large scale eddies, they extract energy from the mean flow. These then the large scale eddies pass over this energy, extracted energy from the mean flow to relatively smaller eddy. That smaller eddy pass the energy to again a smaller eddy, and this process go on is a one-way traffic. The large eddies extract energy from the mean flow and passes on to smaller and smaller eddies. Ultimately, it is disappeared in the smallest eddies, the Kolmogorov eddies. So the large eddies, if we assume that their size is of the order of L, then the smallest or the dissipating eddies or the Kolmogorov eddies have the size of L by Re to the power 3 by 4. L by Re to the power 3 by 4. And in a direct numerical simulation, all these eddies are resolved. All these eddies are resolved. No modeling, no filtering, nothing. In a large eddy simulation, assuming that we take our cutoff length somewhere here, then these eddies are filtered out, but these eddies are resolved. All these eddies are resolved, but only these eddies are filtered out. Of course, we can take the cutoff length wherever we like. We can take even the cutoff length here, how much you want to keep. However, the thing is that the very small scales, the smallest scales, they are usually modeled. They are not resolved. But most of the flow field is resolved. While in RANs, only very large scale eddies, they are resolved. Rest all are modeled. So you see the modeling here is simplified in case of a large eddy simulation, because the smallest eddies are only the smallest eddies are modeled, and the smallest eddies are mostly, say, universal. The smallest eddy is in different flows. If it is a flow over a car, or flow over an aircraft, or flow over a building, or flow around a ship, or flow in a pipe, in all cases the smallest eddies have more or less universal behavior. So any particular model will apply to all cases without much error. While in case of RANs, since the large eddies are also modeled, the large eddies are very much flow dependent, boundary condition dependent. So modeling is rather a complicated task in RANs, and model which are good for one particular case may be useless in another case. So while using large area simulation, I've already mentioned large scales are directly simulated. The smallest scales are parameterized by statistical model or subgrid scale model. The large scales, they characterize the flow, they are sensitive to boundary conditions and anisotropic. They contain most of the fluctuating kinetic energy. The small scales are weak, containing a very few percentage of the total kinetic energy, but they are isotropic and in general of universal character, and they are responsible for viscous dissipation. So how to apply filter to the Navier-Stokes equations, which contains all the scales? Okay, there are various types of filters. One is the theoretical filter, which may be directly applied to the governing equations, and a filtered set of equations are to be derived by that, which is called theoretical filter with a cutoff length, which may be called as lambda c. But you see, when we go for a numerical simulations, we always discretize our space and use some form of approximation to approximate the derivatives or to compute the fluxes. We use some sort of approximations. Now, these together applies to type of filter. Because of the discretization of the space, introduces a filter which has, or other, in terms of wave number, which is say inversely proportional to the eddy size, is pi by delta h. So when we are solving on a numerical computational grid, we are automatically introducing a filter. Similarly, when we are approximating the derivatives by a finite difference approximation or computing the flux based on some approximations, we are introducing some filter. So when we really go for a numerical simulations, all these filters together makes up the effective filter. That is, we may apply a filter to the equations, that is theoretical filter, with a cutoff length of say 5 times the Kolmogorov scales. But the mesh or the discrete grid that we use to solve the equations finally, that is capable of only say 10 times the Kolmogorov scales. So even though we have applied 5 times the scales to the equations, but due to the discretization, we are using another 10 times the Kolmogorov length. So our filter width has increased. So the effective filter is a combination of all these filters. So amongst the filter, there are various type of filters. With a convolution filter is where we apply a convoluting operator to the actual variable. Say u is the actual or the correct flow velocity, and we are applying a convolutive filter to it. Then we are getting a filtered velocity, where those scales, this delta and tau are the cutoff scales, those are filtered out. So this is the filtered solution, and the actual solution or the correct solution is this u, which is sum of this filtered solution plus the filtered out, the resolved. This is what is resolved, I mean, our equation still retains this, but this is filtered out from the equations. So, which is the subgrid, known as the subgrid component. The subgrid component of the variable, here it is the flow velocity, and this is the resolved component. And many of you might be familiar with both RANS and LES. Here we must remember that this filtered variable in LES is not the statistical mean of the RANS. They are completely different quantity. None of them are actual solution. The actual solution would have been obtained from DNS, but we are making approximation both in LES or RANS. So from RANS, what we get, we call that the average or mean velocity. From LES, what we call is, what we get is called the filtered quantity. But the filtered quantity and the mean quantity are not the same. Filtered quantities, they retain the contribution of all the eddies except which are filtered out, while the mean quantity contains the contribution of only the very large scale eddies and rest all are modeled. So their contribution is not there in the mean. So the standard filter they are used are, one is called a Gaussian filter, given by this, along with their Fourier transform. The box or top hat filter, given by this, and sharp cutoff filter. So these are the some standard filters. They are applied to the Navier-Stokes equations, and a filtered set of equations called the Elias equations, they are obtained. Now let's come to computational aeroacoustics. What is this computational aeroacoustics? Aeroacoustics is the science that deals with the sound waves generated aerodynamically in an unsteady flow. Remember that only that sound which is generated aerodynamically, not by vibration of a solid object. No, it is the sound generated by the unsteadiness in the flow or a fluctuation in the flow itself. There may or may not be a solid boundary associated anywhere in the flow, but still the sound is created aerodynamically. So that is what is aeroacoustics. And of course, computational aeroacoustics is that branch of aeroacoustics that aims to analyze the generation and propagation of the noise through numerical methods. Now, computational aeroacoustics or aeroacoustics as a whole is becoming important day by day because of severe increasing environmental constraints that are nowadays being put. And the situation has come to state that the designers need to consider the sound that the designed aircraft is going to produce or any other vehicle that is going to produce. And one need to reduce that sound because of the stringent environmental constraints. Of course, even these aeroacoustics sometimes can damage also the structures. That we'll see. Now, if we concentrate mostly on aircrafts, then aircraft's noise results from various aeroacoustic sources. That is moving and fluctuating forces. That is any component which produces or which is the cause of production of fluctuating or unsteady forces. Such things like fans, propellers, rotors, turbines. all of them produce unsteady forces, unsteady aerodynamic forces, and produces unsteadiness in the flow. So that they are of course a source of sound. Then there might be isolated turbulence, say like the jets of an engine. The jets coming out of an engine. Of course, here there are no solid body. It is only the jet flow, but the nature of the jet flow is so unsteady that that produces sound. And then flow interaction. Like say the flow around the fuselage is interacting with the flow around the landing gears, then the wing trailing edge and slats, flaps, then there are cavities. All these produces. Now the CAA methods are strongly linked to CFD. Of course, one may ask that why do we need at all a CAA? Because since the flow over this, whether it is steady, unsteady, turbulent, whatever it is, all these flows are governed by the same governing equations, the same laws. Then why do we need a CAA separately? The CFD itself will give us. We'll see that why we need that. But as such, even though CAA methods, they are very strongly linked to CFD. Now, CAA methods use specific techniques to resolve wave behavior better, which makes them different than general computational fluid dynamics. Not that they are basically different, because both attempts to solve the same equations. Only the approach or how they are solved, what exactly is their objective, that differentiates them. Now, to understand them, let's see this nature of these aeroacoustic waves. Since it is sound, it is a wave, obviously. The acoustic waves, they are generated by these aerodynamic sources. The unsteady flow due to the moving components, fans, rotors, propellers, or the free turbulence due to jet or flow interaction. So all these sources, these aerodynamic sources, they generally produce this sound, generate this sound. Then these initially propagate. Obviously, once generated, they have to propagate to a distance. And the first stage of propagation is near that body where the sound is created. Near the body, there is a very complex flow field, as you know, because of the effect of these geometry. The flow field is complex, very close to the body. Far away from the body, it is a relatively simple flow field, sometimes even mostly static, and the sound propagates through that also. So there are three stages in the sound generation and propagation. The first stage is generation near the body, or maybe in some cases free from body, as in turbulence or somewhere. Then the first stage of propagation in a very complex flow field where there are large flow gradients, where there is turbulence, where there might be other surfaces from where the wave may reflect and may be scattered. And then after a certain distance, the acoustic wave radiates towards the far field through a medium which is reasonably simple and considered more or less a uniform flow. Now, all these aeroacoustic mechanisms involved, that is the source generation, the acoustic propagation, refraction and scattering, They are all relevant to the physics of fluid dynamics, and obviously they are contained in the governing equations or flow conservation equations. So they could be theoretically simulated by solving the Navier-Stokes equations on a large domain extending from the source region to the far field. That is true. There is no doubt about it that we can solve the flow equations to get all the information, including all these noise propagation to far field also. But then, of course, you have to solve the Navier-Stokes equations to a far field. Such an approach faces the difficulty of handling fluctuations covering a very extended range of length scales and amplitude. Turbulent eddies or structures that generate noise have small length scales but high energy amplitudes, whereas the resulting acoustic waves they propagate away with the same frequency have comparatively very long wavelength but small energy amplitude. So these computational array acoustics need to handle the entire problem. The distinct acoustic field that is generated by unsteady flows, possibly but not necessarily in the vicinity of rigid or flexible bodies. Now, when an unsteady fluid flow takes place in a bounded spatial region, and the acoustic pressure fluctuation in the distant field, where the fluid is uniform and at rest or in uniform motion, is the desired solution. So, you see the fundamental difficulty why the same CFD technique cannot be used for aeroacoustic prediction is because of the extensive nature of the domain and simultaneously behavior of these waves, the sound waves. Acoustic computations need to be covered for a very large domain because the sound once generated, they're propagated to a very far field. Far away, the sound intensity may be quite high. Whereas the other effect of the flow, they might be negligible, completely negligible. So when you are solving CFD problem for say, for any design purpose, where our main interest to compute the pressure or the stresses on the body, the forces acting on the body, they may not be affected by the far field, very far. What is happening very far from the object may not have any influence on the pressure or stresses or the forces that are acting on the body, while the sound is not that. So to compute sound field, we need to have a very large domain. That's one of the biggest difficulty. We cannot cover such a very huge domain. And others, as you mentioned here, that mostly the eddies which produces the noise, they have very small length scales, but they have very high energy amplitudes. While the sound field at far away is again operating at the same frequency, but it has very large wavelength and very small energy. So there is a difference in scales. Now, you see the governing equations of fluid flow, that is the Navier-Stokes equations, if the equations or even the inviscid counterpart, the Euler's equations, if the equations are analyzed, it shows that the flow equations support three different type of waves. Or in other way, that the solutions of the governing equations of fluid motion, whether Navier-Stokes equations or Euler equations, they contain three different type of waves, or their solutions is made up of three different type of waves. The one is entropy wave, which by nature are dispersive and dissipative, and the entropy waves travels in the direction of the flow with the velocity of the flow. That is, the entropy propagation velocity of the entropy waves is same as the flow velocity, and they propagates in the direction of the flow. The vorticity wave, they too are dissipative and dispersive, and identical to entropy waves, they also propagate in the direction of the flow with the same velocity as the flow. The third kind of waves are acoustic waves, which are different nature. They are non-dispersive, they are non-dissipative, and they expand radially, that is, they propagate in all directions with the speed of sound. Not with the speed of the flow, but with the speed of sound, and they propagate in all directions, not in the direction of the flow. And also they are non-dissipative and non-dispersive. The entropy waves are associated with density fluctuation alone. The vorticity waves are associated with velocity vector fluctuation alone, while acoustic waves are associated with fluctuation in all flow variables, density, velocity, and pressure. And because of this, acoustic waves are known to have three different modes: pressure mode, velocity mode, or vorticity mode, and density mode, or entropy mode. So acoustics are defined as pressure mode acoustics, vorticity mode acoustics, and entropy mode acoustics, because acoustic waves are associated with fluctuation in pressure, density, as well as velocity vector. So what we discussed here, that say, assuming that the flow over a solid body, would like to know the sound produced by flow over a solid body. So we have a solid body and there is a near field, where we must solve the complete nonlinear equations. Then, little away from that solid body, we may simplify the equations, linearize the equations, and further away, we may still use the linearized equations, but we may again have the coefficient constants. So if we do not distinguish these two, over these two reasons, we may solve the linearized equations, because once the sound waves or the sound sources are generated, sound is generated, the propagation is not much dependent on those nonlinearities. While generation depends on the nonlinearities, propagation do not depends on the nonlinearities. So away from the body, that is in the far field, and say not so far field, but the medium field, we can still use linearized equations. But this is the complete domain where we need to solve the equations to and find our sound generation and sound propagation, which is not feasible in the standard CFD algorithm, CFD methods. However, theoretically, of course, we can use the same direct numerical simulation or large eddy simulation to compute the acoustic propagation also. So these are the methods available for CAA theoretically. direct numerical simulation where complete Navier-Stokes equations can be solved without any assumptions or any modeling to a very far field. Now you see that that is not even feasible for the near field. So forget about this far field. The far field is really far. So it is out of questions. DNS for CAA is out of questions. Same goes for LES. LES for CAA, LES and DNS, they can be used for the near field to get the sound sources or the generation of the sound accurately, but they cannot be used to find the propagation to a far field. So what we need is, for far field sound propagation, a hybrid or a coupled approach. Amongst these coupled approach, there are, as you mentioned, that we have a linearized equations, and since the sound waves are non-dissipative, non-dispersive, viscosity doesn't play a role in the propagation of sound wave. So even the viscous terms we can drop. We can solve a linearized version of Euler equations in this part. As we mentioned, in this part we can solve linearized Euler equations for sound propagation. Or we can use some integral methods. Or of course there are some other methods like expansion about incompressible flow, acoustic perturbation equations. I will mostly concerned with these integral methods because they are the most popular as of now. Where the idea is that we solve DNS or LES here in this near field, and then we get the sources, we find out what are the sound sources or how much sound is generated from here, and then use some integral approach to find how much will be the sound at a very far field, say here, or even here. So DNS or LES here to get the sound sources, and then integral method to find the sound intensity at a very far field observer, which are called the integral methods. Amongst the integral methods, there are several methods. They are called the Light-Hill analogy, Kirchhoff's integral, and Fox-Williams and Hawking's methods. This is, I've already mentioned, the difficulty in the direct solution. Still, let's mention direct solution of NS equations would provide the radiated sound field, but the approach is not practical because of computing limitations, as the domain involved is much larger compared to ordinary aerodynamic problem. A number of additional difficulties because of the nature of the problem. Standard CFD algorithms not applicable. Numerical schemes that possesses minimum dissipation, minimum dispersion, and isotropy are necessary. You see, those who are familiar with CFD algorithms, you know the CFD algorithms in generally uses some type of upwinding inherent for stability, so that solution becomes stable. Now, you see, the upwinding means you are giving a directional bias. You are giving a directional bias. But the sound waves do not have any directional bias. They are non-dissipative. The upwinding introduces some sort of dissipation, but sound wave is not dissipative. So when you introduce a dissipative methods, that will dissipate the sounds. And since the sound fluctuations, sound amplitudes are very small compared to the other flow quantities, whether to compute the pressure and forces, say you usually are interested in the pressure which are of the order of pristine pressure, somewhat more or less. But sound waves depends on the pressure which is of the order of pascals, not of bars. While for forces and pressures, you are interested in pressure of the order of bars, few bars. While sound wave is only a few pascals, sound wave fluctuations. So if you apply a dissipative method, this this may be dissipated out. When you have 10 to the power 5 pascals or 10 to the power 6 pascals, in that whether you have uh, 50 pascals or 100 pascals, more or less, it doesn't make any difference. But that may be the sound. So it's gone. So algorithms for aeroacoustics must have minimum dissipation, minimum dispersion, and isotropy, because it has no directional bias. So you see, the standard CFD algorithms will most often be not useful. This we will forget. The equations. The acoustic field is very extensive compared with the scale of the flow field, and is a very low energy compared with the flow field. So that's, we mentioned, that produces that gives the difficulty. The acoustic inefficiency of low Mach number flows raises the very real possibility that numerical discretization itself may act as a more significant sound source than the flow understudy. That is, your discretization itself introduces some fluctuations, which is numerical fluctuations. You are introducing it because of your discretization of the equations of the space, and that fluctuation may be even stronger than the actual sound that is produced. Then you get something which is useless. You compute sound field which is not actually the sound field. So besides the large size of the computational domain, there is additional difficulty of the nature of the problem, which makes it difficult. The frequencies involved are much higher than those of interest in the ordinary CFD problems. For meaningful resolutions in the time domain, very small time steps are desired for aeroacoustic fluctuations, because sound wave frequencies are much higher. So you need to have very small time step to compute sound. So that's a very stringent restrictions. Similarly, the wavelengths encountered are much lower in magnitude. Thus, to avoid unacceptable distortion of the solution, the characteristic size must satisfy much less than lambda by 2 pi, where lambda is the wavelength of the sound wave. And what is that? Minimum 8 to 10 points per wavelength are usually needed. So we see that actually these are the reasons why direct numerical simulation or large area simulation cannot be used to compute sound field at a far field, sound pressure at a far field. Because you may think that, okay, no fine mesh is required when there is no much changes in the flow. There is not much change in the flow, but the nature of the sound waves needs that type of refined mesh even at far field if we want to use DNS or LES. Hence, DNS or LES are not applicable. We are forced to use integral methods. So these are that acoustic prediction method must be non-dissipative and non-dispersive or non-oscillatory. Higher order isotropic ENO schemes or DRP schemes or optimized schemes are preferable. They have to be used. And there is stringent requirement on outflow and radiation boundary condition. Because you see, the sound wave once generated, they are propagated to a very far field. But if your outflow boundary is not exactly transparent, then that will reflect back the sound and it will not compute the correct sound field at the far field. So it is a very stringent requirement on outflow and radiation boundary condition. And we need specially designed non-reflecting boundary conditions. So see, these are required for the DNS or LES that has to be applied in the near field. Even when you are using integral method for the far field and say DNS or LES in the near field, that DNS or LES must involve these higher order isotropic ENO schemes or DRP schemes or optimized schemes, and specially designed non-reflecting boundary condition, so that you get the sound sources at the near field boundary correctly. So these are a set of stringent non-reflecting boundary condition. These are the non-reflecting boundary conditions to be solved. These. Now let's come to the integral method of solution of the aeroacoustic problem. Acoustic analogy by Lighthill, Fox, Williams and Hawkins, and Kirchhoff methods. Here, since we already have a DNS or LES solution in the near field, so the flow quantities are known in a region near the source. Use the integral approach to find the propagation of the acoustic to the far field. In the far field, we are not interested in the flow, but only the sound field. In the near field, we already have the solution. The Kirchhoff's method. Kirchhoff's method derived a convected wave equation from the Navier-Stokes equations themselves, or the Euler's equations, which is given by this. Or P prime is the pressure fluctuation, which is taken as the measure of the sound field, fluctuating pressure. So this is the equation that has to be solved on the near field boundary to the far field. Knowing the quantities at the near field boundary, at the far field, pressure fluctuation can be computed using these equations, which is known as Kirchhoff's convected wave equation. Now, Kirchhoff provided two solutions for these, whether based on whether that near field boundary, whether that is stationary or moving. If the near field boundary, if you remember that this is the near field boundary. So based on whether this boundary is stationary or moving, it is that. Or if the fluctuating pressure on the surface of that near field is known, the fluctuating pressure at very far field can be given by this integration. The assumption is that all acoustic sources, the sources which are producing the sound, they are on that surface of that boundary surface of that near field, and we want how much sound is being received by an observer at a far away, at a distance x from that surface. How much is the sound? So this equation has a analytic solution, and that analytic solution gives this, if that is a stationary surface. Now, of course, there is to think the surface may be moving. When the surface is moving, the surface may be a subsonic surface or might be a supersonic surface. So if the surface is subsonic, then the far field acoustic fluctuation is given by this equation. You see this, while here we have a time derivative tau. This time here is defined in a little different manner. The time is defined now by this quantity. But once again, we have an analytic solution to find the pressure at the far field or the sound at the far field. So you see that these are maybe useful to compute the sound that is produced by a propeller or helicopter blades. If the surface moves at a supersonic speed, it still has the same governing equation, same solution, only that delay time is defined differently. Compared to the subsonic case, the delay time is defined differently. This R1 here has now plus minus. That is depending upon on which side of the surface the observer point is, your delay time tau is defined. The R1 there is plus minus. That one side it is minus, the other side it is. And the radiated pressure field takes this form. So you see that's a very simple method. Once we know the fluctuating pressure at the near field boundary, which we can obtain using say DNS or LES, then we can apply these integrations to compute the sound field at a far off distance. Entropy mode acoustics. So in the situation where entropy mode acoustics is very important, which happens when the temperature gradients are very high, the fluctuating components of temperature can be very large, leading to entropy waves, which causes the density fluctuation, and that leads to entropy waves. Again, the acoustic analogy equation can be given by this. Okay, or this is entropy. Now let's come to the Light-Hills equation. The Light-Hills equation shows the role of vorticity in the generation of sound, or role of vorticity in the pressure and velocity and density fluctuation. And the equation is given by this. This equation is very easy to obtain. It's like obtaining your, say, the turbulent flow equations. You put a mean plus a fluctuation. In the Navier-Stokes equation, for u, you put a mean flow and a fluctuation. Then subtract, that is, put u equal to u0 plus u prime, where u0 is a mean, and plus u prime. And or rather u equal to u0 plus u, and also u equal to u0, then subtract the two. Subtract the mean flow from that, and the resulting equation gives this. This term is called Light-Hills stress tensor, which is given by this. Rho, Vi, Vj, or Vi, Vj are the fluctuating velocity. The small small characters are fluctuation, P minus P0, and if it is subscript with 0, that is the mean, P minus P0, C0 square, rho minus rho 0, delta I0 minus sigma Ij. Sigma Ij comes from here, the viscous sound. So looking to the term, this is excess momentum transfer, wave amplitude nonlinearity due to mean density variation, and this is attenuation of sound. C0 is the mean speed of sound, rho 0 is the mean density. This Tij light hill stress tensor is this quantity. Now, if we decompose the variables like this, Tij rho bar plus rho prime Bi, this, it gives 4 different terms, the fluctuating terms. One is shear action, or shear mode wave, interaction between shear mean flow and fluctuation, shear mean flow and fluctuation. This is self fluctuation, that is fluctuation interacting with themselves, which is a quadratic term. This is an entropic, fluctuation in density and pressure, and this is viscous, fluctuating viscous stresses. This is negligible at sound source. So the light hill stress tensor shows that there are vorticity mode acoustics, there is a self-induced acoustic and entropic mode acoustics, all are present and given by this light hill stress tensor. Further analysis shows that this light hill stress tensor behaves like a quadrupole source. You may recall the basic fluid mechanics, source, vortex, point source, point vortex. The point source is called the monopole source, a dipole, a doublet, and a quadrupole. If you remember, a doublet is a source and source sink pair separated at a infinitesimal distance. Similarly, a quadrupole is a source pair and sink pair. You may think about a square where the vertices are one vertex, a source is at a vertex, in the next vertex it is a sink, then again a source, then again a sink. So this source sink combination when the separation distance is 0. So it is a source pair and a sink pair, that is quadrupole. So the light hill source term is just like a quadrupole. So if this is the equation, there is a Green function solution to this equation given by this. And for far field expansion, this is given by this, where this x approaches infinity. So if we know this quantity near the source, that is on the near field boundary, we can evaluate this integration and find the fluctuation at the far field, wherever you want, as far as you want. So here you see that some example application of light hills analogy is shown is a jet. Near the jet, all the fluctuation is called, and LES is used to compute this jet flow and acoustic. Over this domain, LES is used to compute all the fluctuations and the flow field. Once the flow field is known on these boundaries, then this Little's analogy is used to evaluate the sound at very far field. Similarly, a self noise due to an flow over an airfoil. So there are some references where these applications are made of Little's analogy using either LES or DNS for the near field and then Lighthill analogy to compute the sound field far away. Now, this Lighthill analogy is useful when there is no solid body present, particularly for the flow where the free turbulence is the sound source. As in case of the flow over an airfoil, where mostly the turbulence in the wake region that is creating the sound, or in the jet, again that jet mixing and turbulence in the jet that is creating the sound. So Lighthill's analogy is useful for that. Now, Lighthill's analogy do not consider any boundary in it or application of boundary condition. So when such a solid boundary is present or the flow is due to a solid boundary, then the most useful method is Fox, Williams and Hawkins, popularly known as FWH. Actually, it's name of two gentlemen, Fox Williams and Hawkins. They derived these equations, which you can see slightly different from the Little's equations. So this is the Fox-Williams-Hawking equation, where we have a turbulence. If the turbulence itself is moving, that is the source of turbulence that is creating the turbulence that itself is moving. So it can be a solid body which is creating the turbulence that is moving. So turbulence is moving. Then there are two distinct regions of fluid flow and solid boundaries in the fluid flow. In such situation, this Fox-Williams-Hawkins method can be used. See the governing equations. There is one HF, otherwise left hand side is same as the previous equations. You see, this equation is same as the previous equation, except there is one HF. For H, this is a Heaviside function which demarcates two boundaries. So like if we think about an aircraft wing and outside. So inside the wing and outside, that will be distinguished by Heaviside function. It's like a delta function. Up to certain extent, at some position, it has some value. So here, say for f equal to something, hf is 0, and for f equal to something, hf is 1. That is what is this Heaviside function hf. So when 0, that is inside the body, no such thing. These are vanishing. But you see that there are some additional terms which comes because of the presence of the boundaries. Because of the surface on which two sides this HF differs. One side of the surface HF is 1, one side of the surface HF is 0. The Heaviside function. And there are two terms which contains a derivative of that, which is of course only non-zero on the surface. Everywhere else it is 0. Only on the surface. So these terms represents only surface terms. These terms represents only surface terms or the presence of boundary. Once again, the solution can be obtained by three integrals, one a volume integral and two surface integral. One volume integral and two surface integral. And you see that some quantities are contained in bracket like Tij, which means that these are to be calculated at the retarded time. That is, while computing these, the time present here is to be taken as this. So this was the only term for light hill analogy, or where the sound is due to free turbulence, which is a quadruple term. But you see, in addition, this Fox-William-Hawkins method have introduced two more terms, which are of surface integral, not volume integral, and these are ones behave like a dipole or doublet, the other behaves like a monopole. So the free turbulence sound is sound due to a quadruple source, while the sound produced by any boundary may be fluctuating or non-fluctuating. They are given by a dipole or and monopole. Out of that, you see that this dipole sound is related to a fluctuation in pressure directly. So sometimes it is called a lifting component. So wherever there is a possibility of lift, so that gives a dipole sound. Another way, if S shrinks to the body, then dipole is due to fluctuating surface forces, and monopole is aspiration through the surface. Then there are some further advancement on the Fox-William-Hawkins method. It is the most popular and accepted to be the most accurate amongst all the integral methods, or for any methods where you cannot compute the sound field directly. I mean, where you cannot use DNS or LES for computing the entire sound field. For all other available methods, FWH or Fox-William-Hawkins method is considered as the most accurate. Now, there are some advanced version of FWH methods which consider that surface may be porous. And also if the surface is moving. You remember when you're talking about this surface is the near field boundary. And fortunately, if the near field boundary is very close to the boundary also, then also the Fox-William-Hawkins method gives very good prediction for far field sound. So this method is used for CFD where the surface has to be placed quite close to the body, but not on the body. Of course, if you should not put it on the body itself, but you can put it very close to the body. There are few references for use of Fox-William methods. This is one of those advancements where the surface on which the sound source are placed, that is maybe the computational domain or the computational domain boundary for the LES or DNS, the near field boundary, or you may put a simplified surface within that boundary. I mean, this integral surface need not be the computational boundary surface. You may put it inside also. See, as an example, see if you are thinking about flow over a cylindrical tube, your computational domain may be, say, 20 diameter of the tube, 20D. So it's not necessary that you have to put your integration surface on that 20D boundary. You may put anywhere between that 1D, that is the surface of the cylinder, to 10D, or 0.5D to 10D. So you can put it at 1D or 2D anywhere. And that when that boundary itself is moving, the equations change to this. This is only a similar thing, but little difficult computation. This is the FWH equation. So when you have moving surface, the integral surface is moving. Solution of the homogeneous wave equation using the free space Green function. So Fox-Willems-Hawkins also become like a Kirchhoff method if you choose the surface similar to the Kirchhoff's method. But FWH method is superior because here you can put the integral surface even very close to the boundary. Okay. While for Kirchhoff's case, you cannot put that surface very close to the boundary. It has to be far away, not in the nonlinear region. You cannot put that surface in the nonlinear region because the equation is linearized. The Fox-Willems-Hawkins equation is not linearized, so the integral surface can be chosen very close to the boundary, solid object. But this Fox-Willems method, Hawkins method, will become like a Kirchhoff method if you put the integral surface far away. So here some computations results are given. One is jet. You see that there are various surfaces can be taken for the integration as is shown by these lines. These are those sound waves. This you forget. So this you have already discussed. I'll come to few applications. These are some CFD applications. Flow over aircraft wing, flow over complete aircraft, flow over missiles with boosters and thus. Now CFD-CAA, some defense applications which include fuel systems, external aerodynamics, engine core compartments, cabin ventilation, submarines, rotorcraft dynamics, missiles. So use of CFD for analyzing flow around a helicopter, flow over a diver, flow around road vehicles. You see, engine, under other facility. So sound wave at different orientations in different degrees. By Fox William Hawkins. The rotor blade noise. Okay. See the vortices here and here, and the sound field produced by these, and also the directivity. This is the direction in which the sound is the largest, and the levels are also shown. The noise due to tip vortex interaction was negligible, but anyway, these findings are. This is a fan noise, fluctuating pressure field. Again, jet at takeoff, flow field at different location from the jet, the aeroacoustic computational domain, and sound field from different parts. These fans noise. This is an engine inlet. Aero engine inlet. And the CFD simulation result, then flow field data, and the sound propagation data. You see that the sounds are propagated in certain direction because of the flow. Though sound wave is isotropic, radiates in all directions, but in these cases the sound wave has some directivity. In these directions the sound waves are strong. And also see the sound wave frequencies are also quite large. 3 kilohertz or 4 kilohertz. However, the sound pressure level remains always within 100 dB. So depending upon how long you are subjected to the sound, this may be restricted, may or may not be permitted. That is for an engine. This is uh, two tandem cylinders. Actually, it is installed in QA facility of NASA LRC. These two, and they do produces sound. So that sound has been computed. This vortex shading and their interaction, that actually the cause of sound here. So these are some experiment that NASA did. These are the places perhaps they thought better for putting the microphones to capture the sound, and the computations CFD and CA surfaces. Fox-William Hawkins method was used. Fluctuating pressure at a particular point at the microphone locations. At the 3 microphone locations, this is the fluctuating pressures with time history. Then is a comparison with that experimental measurement and uh, LES FWH coupled simulation. So this is a rocket engine at lift-off condition. Experimental and numerical comparison. Okay. And you can see the domain here. This is the domain where CFD simulation, that is LES or DNS, may be computed. And here the CAA method is applied. But here also a grid is made, that is a linearized Euler was solved in this particular case. This is the flow field, the experiments and computationals. Various quantities. These are density gradients or Schlieren pictures like that. Numerical Schlieren. And these are temperature field, vorticity field, mass fraction. The sound, oh, these are turbulent field. These are very velocity fields. That's okay. These are a surface jet. DNS is computed here and acoustic computation over these. This we have already mentioned. This. Okay, I'll end here, and if you have any questions or thing, please.
Participants can start asking questions